Guys, it's Ron, and I'm back with my trusty sidekick Henry, and we're over here blasting some Suicidal Tendencies music. You know, the song Subliminal. I don't have anything else, dude. You know, on repeat. You know, trying to decode the secret messages in social media and on TV. So this video is on critical thinking because many of us are confused. And I'm a teacher, so I try to teach people how to, critically evaluate data to make sure they're actually getting. It's hard nowadays, right? It's almost impossible. So, it feels like nowadays, right? I feel like I'm kind of stuck in a Pink Floyd album. Just another brick in the wall. Perfectly trained to obey and never to question. This is basically called the divide, right? On one side, you have people treating the media like the Ten Commandments. On the other side, you got folks bowing down to politicians and influencers like it's the second coming. Both sides are just too busy, calling each other brainwashed to even pause and ask, who's profiting from my fear? Why am I supposed to hate people I never met? If you just listen to, the mainstream media, then you're going to get their side, and who knows who's paying them. Okay, well, let's be real about this, right? Social media has turned us into experts because we saw a meme once. We scroll headlines and then we share them and call that research. Because who needs facts, when you got clickbait, right? So, even the best of us get caught up in these echo chambers, just feeding the same ideas back to ourselves like a digital parrot. That's not learning. That's mental stagnation. What's funny? It's not like music, and quotes have not tried to warn us. I like listening to lots of different music, right? Punk rock, right? Bad Religion has a song called, you can check it out if you haven't heard it, right? Digital Boy, right? Because, why think critically when you can be entertained to death, the Dead Kennedys have a song called Holiday in Cambodia, right? Where privilege has us ignore what's really going on, Suicidal Tendencies, the song Subliminal, one of my favorite songs when I was growing up. I didn't even really know what it meant until I got older, until I became a teacher. And now I teach people how to critically evaluate information. College helped me to do that, but not all people in college are critically evaluating because they believe all the stuff that they're being told to, which is not always true. Like I tell my students, I didn't write those books. I can't promise you that that's all true. But I try to help them evaluate both sides to make sure they can learn the information and not just believe everything they hear, right? Especially nowadays, right? Another one of my favorite songs, Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall, right? Where basically schools crank out obedient little robots. They've been trying to tell us that for a long time. Metallica had a song called Disposable Heroes, right? Where, we're just pawns in someone else's plan, someone else's game. System of a Down, Hypnotize, right? That's talking about basically, media's favorite distraction machine. Public Enemy, Fight the Power, right? It's talking about somebody's got to question authority. Like Rage Against the Machine, they have a lot of songs like that too. That's what they're like a history channel. They're like a history channel, those guys, right? They're awesome. there's another rapper named Immortal Technique, right? And he talks about the song. It's called "Cause of Death," right? And exposes the marriage of government and media. The Green Day song "American Idiot," where fear and conformity are the new American dream. People around the world kind of look down on us that way because in America, as Americans, right? Because they think we don't know anything, And there was a little YouTube short, and the guy interviewed a college student in Spain, and he was asking him about like what continent is Africa on, And then the Spanish student said, "Well, Africa is a continent." He says, "What do you think? I'm an American?" I was like, "Wow." So as a teacher, I have a big job to do. Bob Marley, the Redemption song, one of my favorites. Most of his songs are talking about that stuff. Actually, it's funny because the mainstream songs that you hear, you don't hear a lot of that, right? But when you dig deep into his music, that's all he's talking about, right? So emancipate yourself from mental slavery, he says, right? Might be the best advice that no one's taking nowadays, especially, right? And let's not forget about Hobson, the rapper. His lyrics are pretty good for even young people. Even though, I don't like to recommend a lot of rap because a lot of the rap will, it has a lot, like when I was growing up, even though some of the songs have a great message, right? But there's a lot of cursing and stuff, but still, like, there's some good messages. This is a lot more, he's not new, he's been around for a while, but, he talks about brainwashed by a fake life. And then he has another song called, there's a song called, what is it? Fly. Also, that one was basically Ill Mind of Hobson 5. Your mind is a cage. Your heart is a prison. Yeah, Hobson's pretty good too about he's trying to teach people how to critically think, but most people are just listening to the beat and the music and they don't really hear the message. That's some music, right? But let's throw in some famous quotes. George Orwell warned us, the further society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those who speak it. Don't hate me. Don't hate me. Noam Chomsky said that, the general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't know that it doesn't know. And then he said, if you don't believe in the freedom of expression for people you despise, you don't believe in it at all. This is what the video is about, right? The next quote, and it's often attributed to various authors, but it's basically my favorite one. And if you don't control your own mind, someone else will. And that's throughout history, right? The word governments throughout history, to govern, means to control, and ment means the mind. So, be careful. Right, Henry? Gotta be careful. All right. So Jim Rohn didn't sugarcoat it either, right? He said, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. Bob Marley, actually, the rest of his quote was, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. A lot of this has to do with health, like food, what we eat, and what we consume on the media and stuff like that. I'm more of an all-natural. I'm a holistic guy. I eat organic food, A lot of people don't understand that stuff, but it really is important. Exercise. There's a lot of, research that people, they don't want you to see, right? That shows you that you can overcome a lot by taking control of your health, and, your mind, of course. I've watched people destroy their health, relationships and minds throughout my life not because they're like bad people, no, because they know how to evaluate information, and they stop thinking, basically, right? And that's why I started this channel, right? So to help people reclaim their, not just their health, right? And not just to get in great shape, right? But their mind, you know? Curiosity, I love it. I love evaluating information. Sometimes I'm wrong, and it's like, wow. Well, I guess I'm not wrong because when I start off, I tell myself that I don't know. I want to learn from both perspectives, or all the perspectives, and some of the perspectives are pretty out there, right? But I'm going to learn from them, and then I'm going to say, well, maybe in this case, my initial thought was wrong, right? Actually, before I finished this video, I was thinking about my dog Henry, right? And yeah, he's a smart dog. He's a Shepherd Labrador a lab mix, right? But he's a dog, right? So I can't let him, run out in the street, or go chase a cat and stuff. I want to protect him. And then plus, if I give him food, he'll probably just eat what I give him, right? No, I got to feed him healthy food, just like myself. But with us humans, we have to use our minds to think, right? We can't just believe the hype. Like Public Enemy said, don't believe the hype, right? So I'm trying to help you guys, break through some of the mental cobwebs, like I've mentioned before in a video, and, think for yourself and like avoid, being a victim of, the propaganda that makes us fearful. It makes us go against who we even are in our hearts, right? You're feeling anxious. You're not doing what you're supposed to do, right? So let's not be a dog, right? No offense to dogs, it's my favorite creatures on the planet. But let's be smart humans that can critically evaluate data. And just because somebody says I'm a doctor, you don't have to believe them. That's a person, that's a human being trying to tell you that information, right? So, I'm just an educator, I'm a researcher, I've studied history, I've lost my closest loved ones to illness, and that's why I'm doing this, because it's not just about the weight that we can gain, it's about all that stuff right there is affecting our organs. When we eat certain foods, when we take certain medications, our liver, our kidneys, our heart, all of that stuff gets affected, But for me, I try to go natural, I try to go holistic, and I try to feed my organs, because that's what I am. I'm just a bunch of organs, really. Think about it. We're just a bunch of organs, right? But our mind too, right? The mind, that's supposed to be the number one, because if you think about it, I just did a video and it talks about these nuns, right? And they live long lives, and they're just positive. They have this mindset, and there's a lot of research based on that, right? So, watch this channel, and like and subscribe, like I said, and it'll help you, because you're going to know what I know now, and that's why I made this channel, so you can know what I know. And then it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for people to pull the wool over your eyes. So anyway, you guys have a great day, and thanks for watching.